Hello all of you beautiful people, Jules here for WhatCulture.com. I don't know about you, but have you ever stopped in the midst of what you're doing, looked around at the horrified faces, realised that you're naked, covered in blood, and thought, oh damn, this birthday party got really out of hand? And also, am I the bad guy? Well, trust me, it happens, and it happens a lot in video games. You see, the way that developers twist and turn their titles can make it appear that you're the heroic protagonist righting the wrongs of the world, but if you strip away that shiny veneer, you can easily see that you're causing more harm than good. Even worse are the times that there's an equally powerful character standing for the opposite beliefs as you, and it turns out that, hang on, maybe they had a point, which is exactly what we're going to discuss today. So gather round, kids, as I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 more video game villains who were right all along. And yes, I do mean more, as we've covered this topic before, so go check that video out. Simon Miller did it, and he mispronounced King DDD. I mean, I love the man, but that is funny. Number 10, The Heretics, Halo 2. Now, when you bring up Halo 2 to fans of the series, you'll often get two remarks: that the game was basically a massive advert for Halo 3 and not as good as the original, or that the online multiplayer shaped them as the person they are today with its liquid smooth gameplay and tight as my bumhole as I pass through customs controls. However, not many people talk about the Heretics. You remember the Heretics, that the Arbiter is sent by the Covenant to kill as one of his first tasks. That's a lot of the's in that last sentence, right? Now, you might not think it when you're receiving a carbine full of space lead that these might be the good guys, but trust me, they kind of are. These are elites that have seen what horrors the Halo constructs will unleash if activated, and they want nothing to do with it, fighting against the prophets and their kin to make them see the truth. So what do? Well, you kill them. Whoops. Although, to be fair, their leader doesn't help themselves by trying to shoot you at the moment that you lower your guard after chatting about the situation. I mean, just 10 seconds more and they might have had a powerful ally. Oh well, we got the message eventually. Number 9, Dr. Wily, Mega Man 9. Now, I know what you're thinking when you look at Dr. Wily, that anyone who looks like this cannot be trusted, and frankly, shame on you for hating on this bold, beautiful man, because while he's most definitely not the most welcome egg at the egg party, he actually has posited a small but very insightful piece of wisdom in Mega Man 9. Now, as you might have guessed from the previous 8 main games, Mega Man 9 once again tasks you with taking down a new series of robot masters who are causing some trouble. Although this time, something's a bit different. This time, these robot masters have been made by Dr. Light and seemingly have nothing to do with Wily. As you progress through the game, you'll learn that all these robots were due for recycling, and Dr. Wily approached them to help them avoid this rather gruesome fate. Now, true, he did use this time to reprogram them for evil in order to frame his rival Dr. Light, but still, ignore that and look at the recycling aspect in more detail. These are sentient beings, so imagine if you were told that you'd outlived your purpose and were due to be smelted. Naturally, you'd be a bit irked. Wily might have used his position to manipulate them, but it highlights a key point, that robots have a right to robo-life. Number 8, the police forces in most games. Now, this might sound like a cop-out, but when you are indeed taking cops out, you are probably not being very heroic, so it makes sense to include all of these upstanding officers in this list. From GTA to Spider-Man, there are many examples of the law trying to curb the actions of the player. To us, at the time, they're just a nuisance to be shot, kicked, and otherwise thrown off buildings, but really think about it. While they might represent corrupt aspects of the in-game world, there's a good chance that these men and women are just working the 9 to 5. Hell, they probably have kids at home and they're just trying to defend the public from your menace. And before you think of them as killjoys, just take a long, hard look at yourself. Maybe you shooting buses with rocket launchers in GTA 5 isn't pertinent to your quest, and maybe, just maybe, you're a real monster through and through. Still, it's fun though, isn't it? Number 7, Dutch Vanderland, Red Dead Redemption. Now, here's the thing. You're probably looking at this and saying, come on, Jules, Dutch and his posse are most definitely some bad old cowpokes. And you would be right, seeing as they rob, steal, murder, and generally stink up any place that they lay their hats. However, there's a reason why they all follow Dutch for as long as they do. He's a charismatic, almost cult-like leader with the gift of the gab and a fancy coat for every occasion. It's a shame that it's a turncoat, as you end up having to kill him come the close of Red Dead Redemption 1. Going from whispering his sweet as honey promises into the ears of his followers to a desperate man on the run is quite the shocking fall from grace. But even this angel of the people has one more gospel to read before he's through. As the player corners Dutch, he throws his gun down and seems to accept his fate. However, he leaves John Marston with the words, "They'll just find another monster. They have to, because they have to justify their wages." Now, at the time, this might seem like the final words of a con man, but in retrospect, he was right, and that monster would soon become John in the eyes of the government, and he'd be killed for his actions. Dutch was a bad guy, but he had some good advice that fell on deaf ears. Number 6, Pagan Min, Far Cry 4. Pagan Min might not seem like the most obvious choice of man with a point, unless that point was the knife in which he stabs his employees with in the opening section of Far Cry 4, in which case, yes, he definitely does have one. While many will know the tyrannical antagonist of Kyrat better for his murdering and manipulation of the region, if you actually see the game through to the end, you'll realise that the entire area was pretty shagged no matter what happens. If you choose to rally against Pagan Min, you'll end up helping either Sabal or Amita rise to power. And somewhere along the line of "let's have a good old jolly revolution," their messages got a bit mixed up, as Sabal wants to murder hundreds if not thousands of people as a means of cleansing the area for siding with Pagan Min in the first place, and if you choose to side with Amita, she effectively takes children from families in order to build up an army and work opium fields in an effort to repair the area. Both are incredibly dark outcomes, as is shooting either of these new dictators and leaving the area without a figurehead. It's wrong to say that Pagan Min was right in his actions, but at least he wasn't stealing kids or slaughtering thousands. Number 5, Handsome Jack, Borderlands 2. Handsome Jack is one of the most, my lord, I love to hate this guy villains out there. Not only did he murder Roland and force the player to kill Bloodwing, but he dogs the Vault Hunters from dawn until very bloody dusk with his taunts, threats, and endless supply of robots. Not to mention that in the lore, he's also imprisoned his own daughter to be used as what amounts to a living battery pack. He's detestable through and through. However, he wasn't always like this, as in the Borderlands pre-sequel, we see a man who is betrayed by his then bosses, then his allies, and then had a shed load of insane thoughts beamed directly into his mind. It has not been a good day for the bloke. And what was his crime? Well, many to come in the story, but at the core of it, it was a desire to save the world of Pandora from itself. He wanted to use the warrior to cleanse the planet of dangerous animals and to keep the bandits in check, thereby allowing the world to prosper and become the utopia he believed it could be. It's obviously very slippy, this slope that he treads, and you could never call him a hero, but his dream and plan would actually benefit millions in the long run, and he even tells you to stop multiple times so that he could save the planet. Number 4, The Reapers, Mass Effect 3. If there's one thing that strikes fear in the hearts and minds of life across the Mass Effect universe, it's the all-encompassing destruction of your mother's vagina. Sorry, I mean the Reapers, and yes, that is my one per list. Hushed tales are told to young Volus kids as they slurp their meaty soups, what do they eat? Of how one day the evil of the Reapers will spread and how there's no reasoning with them. Except the Reapers are the very definition of reason. Yes, they swing by every couple of thousand of years for a big night out on the Tars and leave the place a bit of a mess, but they do so with the intent of resetting the galaxy in order for it to not fall prey to itself. The concept behind them is that life will reach a point where it turns on itself or creates advanced enough AI that will result in life being destroyed entirely. So by popping in and lopping off a couple of heads, the Reapers push the reset button and reset the universe back so it can flourish once more, but never go beyond a point where it dooms itself entirely. While this is a horrifying concept, at the start of the player's time with the Mass Effect games, we were already seeing the negatives of life emerging through the Quarians and the Geth, a race of machines that's risen up to fight its creators. Therefore, while it sucks that, only 1% of life might survive a Reaper attack, it's actually prolonging the concept of life as we know it further than actually living it could. Number 3, Andrew Ryan, BioShock. Ooh, I do love me some BioShock. Ever since it was announced, I have been enraptured with Rapture, and my cockles have been warmed by this deep dive of death and depravity, which is the BioShock series. And I think that many can agree, the first time will forever hold a place in our hearts because of just how brilliantly written and realised the character of Andrew Ryan was. His superior tone, self-importance, and manipulation of the denizens of Rapture haunt you as you progress through this sinking city. However, if you actually stop to listen to what he's saying, there's a real emphasis on you being an intruder. Now, while this speaks volumes of his paranoia and insanity, as the game progresses, you learn that you are literally a genetically reared assassin hell-bent on destroying Ryan's vision and giving the keys to the kingdom to Fontaine. And you come to realize, hell, he's right. You are an absolute menace to Andrew Ryan's dream. You are destroying everything and in the end are the catalyst to the destruction of Rapture. Now true, Andrew Ryan isn't the Pope of Peacetown, seeing as he uses pheromones and drugs to keep his citizens under control. I mean, what's left of the citizens? I mean, look at them, gross, ooh, get it away. But you, well, you're dooming what's left by gifting it to someone even worse. So would you kindly stop? Number 2, Anarchy, Batman. If there's one thing that we can definitely say about the Batman games is that we're playing the good guy, right? I mean, he's called the Dark Knight and knights are great. Well, there's a slight issue here, as in amongst all of the actual murderers, mutated monsters and Mark Hamills, there is one criminal who might be a little bit more misguided than anything. I'm speaking, of course, about Anarchy, who gives Gotham's greatest a run for his money throughout Batman Arkham Origins. At first, he appears nothing more than a low-level thug willing to cash in on the chaos, but as you unravel his motives, it becomes clear that, well, to put it bluntly, he's got a point. His anger stems from the fact that he perceives Gotham's society as being completely inept and corrupt, where people are told to consume rather than think, and where the police force has become its own gang who run the streets. It's true, he's causing damage to prove his point, but at the heart of it, as he says himself, he wants to help Gotham in the long run. Batman, though, the rich kid that he is, has other thoughts on the matter. And number 1, Magus, Chrono Trigger. Not enough gets said about the absolute joy that is Chrono Trigger on this channel in my opinion, but let me rectify this gross oversight by telling you a tale of a man who was definitely in the wrong place at the wrong time. Magus, also known as Janus, the sometimes baddie and possible party member from Chrono Trigger. When the party first stumbles across this evil-looking magician, it appears that he's trying to summon this massive space parasite called Lavos to the timeline and let it run absolutely hog-wild on the world. Naturally, this fracas leads to a fight, and upon subduing this would-be sage, you feel pretty pumped that you've stopped evil in its tracks. Well, not really, as it turns out that this ritual was to actually summon Lavos so that Magus could kill it. You see, this giant space bug has been causing all sorts of mischief in the future, and it's feeding off of the planet's energy, and also, it killed Magus' sister. Not cool. So Magus, having himself been displaced in time, tries to summon it and pop a pointy thing in this giant pill bug. Yet you had to come along and ruin it. Whoops. Well, don't worry though, things get put right in the end. And there we go, those were 10 more video game villains who were actually kind of right. I will fully accept that these are bad people and they do some pretty goddamn horrible things, but still, for the sake of this list and a bit of a joke, they add a few salient points in there amongst the lack of sanity. But speaking of which, let's have a little chat about our own mental health, because you know what's really important is that you're not a villain to yourself. Treat yourself as fairly as you possibly can, both physically and mentally. There are so many people out there that can help you, and there is no shame and no weakness in asking for help. Alright? And if you want to chat about this or anything else, you can do so at RetroJ over on Twitter. As always, I've been Jules, you have been awesome, never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye!